Hey guys, Cody with VapeHappy here. So I was online the other day just searching around and I found a new website that I've never seen before that has an amazing tool on it that I literally use every single day now. Every single time I go to build a coil, I go to this website. We thought that it was so useful for us and we had never seen anything like it that we'd make a video for you guys showing you not only what it is, what it does, but how to use the thing. So the company that's created this web tool is called Steam Engine. And what the web tool actually does, you go on steam-engine.org and you click on their coil building tab and you can tell it what type of wire you're working with, whether it's titanium, nickel, Kenthal, stainless steel. You tell it what gauge of wire you're working with and you tell it what your target resistance is going to be. Basically, the problem that it solved for me is I would sit down to build my RDA and I would go, okay, I want a 0.5. Now how do I do it? How many wraps do I do? Can I do it in dual coil? I just had no idea until I tinkered enough that I figured it out, and then I just stuck with one build all the time. What this allows you to do is tell the system, I want a 0.5, these are the materials I'm working with, this is the diameter of coil I'm going to be making, is it possible, or how close or far can I get? And it's going to tell you exactly how many wraps to do in your coil to be able to achieve as close as possible to your target resistance level. I'm going to show you how to use the thing, and hopefully it's as useful for you as it has been for me. So it's now time for me to show you how this software actually works. The first thing you're going to need to do is launch your web browser. Right now you can see that I'm running Google Chrome. Next thing, you're going to go up to your address bar and you are going to type www.steam-engine.org. Press enter and it brings you to Steam Engine's homepage, which we can see here. Now they do have quite a few different tabs in their navigational bar. The one we're going to be focusing on today is coil wrapping. So I'm going to click on the coil wrapping tab and it brings me to this page, which is really where all the magic happens. Now there are quite a few different fields here for you to utilize, so what I'm going to do is run you through each one of these and show you exactly what they are and what they do before we really get into practical application examples of how to use this software, just so we all know exactly what each one of these things is when I'm going through it. So starting from top to bottom, left to right, the first option that we have is we can choose to run everything in metric units, or we can choose to run everything in empirical units. Being in the United States, generally speaking, I run off of empirical units. It's what makes sense to me. But in this particular web application, I actually prefer to put everything in metric units. And it's because it makes the conversion from empirical units to metric units extremely simple. And I'll show you guys that when we get into the practical application portion of this. The next category that we have here is material and profile. This is where we get to select the type of wire or material that we're working with. So we do have two different fields. The first field, I'm going to show you the options by clicking on this little black arrow on the right hand side of the field. Drops down this drop down menu, and this is where you select the type of wire you're working with. So you can see we have a few different grades of Kenthal, 4 or 5 different grades of nichrome, 4 different grades of stainless steel. This includes stainless steel 316, which we're seeing in all the new tanks that are coming out recently. We have a few different types of titanium, something that I've never even seen before, nickel Ni200, again, something that I don't know what is, all the way down. Basically, if you can't find what you're working with in this drop-down menu, you might not want to be vaping on it. If it's something that you know is good for vaping and you can't find it here, you're probably an advanced vapor, and you can go down to this custom option. It gets a little more complicated when you're in the custom option. I prefer to stick with something that's in this list, which really gives me a wide range anyways. The next field within material and profile, we can see here, I'm going to drop down our menu, select a single round wire, or we can say we've twisted into parallel our wires, or we're working with a ribbon wire. Next category, we have diameter of wire. This is where you tell it what gauge of wire you're working with, you guys. You do have two different fields here, but when you change one, the other one changes equally. They're just two different ways of measuring the same thing. Generally speaking, I assume we're all going to look at the gauge of wire we're working with and just change the gauge. Let's say I'm working with 28 gauge. I just use these two arrows, drop it down to 28. It automatically tells me what millimeter diameter that gauge of wire actually is, so it converts it over instantly. If you know the millimeter of diameter and prefer to work here, you can change it here instead. I don't know how it converts, so I stick to the gauge. Next category, we have setup. This is where you tell it what type of setup or build you're actually going to be doing. Is it a single coil, dual coil, triple, quad, so forth and so on. Ton of options in here so you can really hone it into the type of build that you want to do. Next category, we have target resistance. This is where you tell the software what your target resistance is. Let's say that when you're done building, you want your build to equal a 0.5 resistance or a 0.2 resistance. You set that here. Next category, we have inner diameter of coil. This is where you tell the software the diameter of your coil, or a different way to say it or look at it is you tell it the diameter of the object that you're wrapping your wire around to actually make your coil. Next category, we have leg length. This is where you tell it the measurement of how long your leg or lead is coming off of your coil until it makes contact with your RDA or your deck. Once you've set all your parameters, you're going to look at your results panel. Now in the results panel, there's really only two things that I look at. I look at the number of wraps it would take. Bear in mind, this is the true number of wraps it would take to reach your target resistance. So what I actually look at, you guys, is the rounded to full wraps section here. We can see that it rounds it to the closest whole number, which would be 16 wraps on each coil if you're doing multiple coils. And what we would actually be achieving with 16 wraps is 1.84 ohms. Pretty dang close to the 1.8 ohms that we were shooting for, so not too bad there, even though we couldn't do the exact number to get exactly what we wanted. Okay, so now that we know what each one of these fields do and the options within, I'm going to run you through a few real-world examples where I'm actually using the software to help me to achieve the build that I'm looking for. So the first thing we're going to do is pick the type of units we're going to be working in. Like I said, I prefer this in metric units, so I'm going to leave it on metric. And then I need to pick the material. So let's say for this example we are doing Kenthal. I'm going to do a single round wire, and let's say I'm working with 26 gauge wire. And I would like to do a dual coil setup. I want my target resistance to come as close to a 0.2 as possible. My inner diameter of coil. Now, here's where I'm going to show you how the software converts from empirical units to metric units for you really seamlessly. I know that I'm going to be using an 1/8 inch drill bit to wrap my coil. Well, I don't know how many millimeters an 1/8 inch drill bit is. I don't even know what the conversion formula would be. So what I'm going to do instead is click this X over Y button that's underneath the MM, and it drops down a scale of an inch for me. I'm just going to select 1/8, and it automatically converts it to millimeters and puts it in the right field for me. Extremely nice. Leg length, I know my leg lengths are usually about 3/16 of an inch, so again I'm going to click on X over Y, and then I'm going to select 3/16 of an inch, and it converts it to millimeters for me. And now we can look at our results panel. Again, our true number of wraps would be 2.46 wraps on each one of our dual coils to be able to achieve the exact 0.2 resistance we were looking for. Since we can't do a 0.46 wrap, I look at rounded to full wraps. It tells me I need to do 2 wraps on each coil, and what I'm actually going to achieve, 0.34 ohm build. Now let's say that I don't want to vape on something that only has 2 wraps on each coil. It doesn't sound appealing to me. What I'm going to do next is play with a couple of the parameters to see what I can change to get more wraps and achieve somewhere close to my 0.2 resistance. I'm honestly not sure if I can do this, you guys, so I'm going to be experimenting a little with you guys watching. Hopefully I can get this right. So I'm going to drop it down, let's say, actually let's bring it up to 28 gauge. No, that brings our wraps down. So let's drop this down to 24 gauge, and it brought our wraps up, but to our 0.2 would be 0.4. And it looks like that's fairly consistent until we get to where it's impractical. So that might be the build that I choose to do. I could play with some of these other parameters to see if I can hone it in. Instead of doing an 1/8 inch, maybe I want to do 3/8 of an inch. That brings me down. If I did a 1/4 inch, it brings me down. So really that's got to stay set. If I make my legs or leads a little bit longer, doesn't really change much. So it looks like that's as close as I'm going to get. Now if I were to drop this down to a single coil, I would have to do 2 wraps to achieve a 0.22. So bearing in mind that this is an exact science and it's going to show you exactly how to do it, it may not always be within the realm of what you would actually like to do. So it's going to show you whether your build is possible, whether it's something you want to do, and how to do it, which is really nice. So for the next example, I'm going to drop this down. Let's say we're using nickel Ni200. I'm going to leave this just a single round wire. I am going to bop this up to 28 gauge, and let's say a dual coil, and I want to achieve a target resistance of 0.15. And let's say we're still doing 1/8 of an inch with 3/16 our lead. Now we look over here and we see we would have to do 21 wraps, and we still don't even get close to our 0.15. It'd be a 0.3. So let's play with some of these parameters for a second. If I drop this down to a single coil, that's realistic. I could do 10 wraps to achieve my 0.15 on a single coil. So that may be what I want to do instead. If I don't want to do that, maybe I can pop this back up to a dual coil and change my gauge of wire. Let's say we're working with 32 gauge. Well, this is not bad, actually. 8 wraps on each coil would achieve a 0.28. Maybe I can drop this down to single coil, and sure enough. So we could do a 4 wrap single coil and achieve exactly my 0.15. So there it is, you guys. Just a quick run through on how to use this software. You'll have to play with it and experiment with it a little bit. You might even need to get used to it before you start to enjoy using it, but it's going to take all the guesswork out of your builds and really help you sit down and understand exactly what you need to do to achieve what you're looking for. So that's going to be it for our close-up. We're going to go ahead and back out and come out to FaceTime. And there you have it, you guys. Just a quick walkthrough or overview on Steam Engine's new coil building tool that they have. Like I said, it's something that I use literally every single day, and now you can use it too to stop guessing on how to build your coils and have a good plan for it when you sit down to make it happen the right way. We're going to add the link below to steam-engine.org. That way you can access it and start playing around with it. Also, you can look forward to some more videos about some of the other tools that Steam Engine does have. They have some things that we're going to be putting up when we have the DNA 200 in stock that's going to help you with temperature coefficiencies, and just a couple other things that I want to show you, so you can look forward to that. And thank you for watching, you guys. We'll see you in the next video.